Hey, what's up, everybody? Ralph here. So for the past 2 years, if you were someone that owned a home, you got to enjoy a huge increase in the value of your property, right? This led to a lot of people to either do a cash out refinance or sell their home altogether and just take in the profits. Even myself, back in July when I sold my property, I was able to come away with about $20,000 over asking price. But we all knew this hot market wasn't going to last forever, especially with inflation being as impactful as it is today. And because of this inflation, this has led to the Feds obviously wanting to step in and try to control the inflation, even though some people would argue like they're a big reason for why inflation is what it is today. But that's another topic for another day. In order to slow down this inflation, obviously the Feds are trying to increase the interest rates to help drive down demand of property. So, and hopefully at the same time, hope to avoid driving this economy into recession. So obviously they're making sure that little by little each month they're bringing up the interest rate, hopefully to drive down inflation while at the same time not trying to bring us into recession. So, and because of this increase, this is causing a lot of home values to decrease, because obviously as the Feds increase the interest rates, this is hopefully going to drive down demand and hopefully increase supply. And when that happens, prices tend to come down. So that's the hope from what the Feds are doing. And because of this, a lot of people are seeing their home values decrease. But obviously, if you're someone that's staying in your home, you don't plan on selling your home, then this is not going to be an issue for you. But if you're someone that's thinking about selling their home sometime in the future, then you're probably not going to make as much today as you could have made, probably 4, 5, 6 months ago. So this leads me to an article that I read on CNBC. Now, the title of the article is like homeowners lose wealth as rising interest rates weigh on home values, right? So to get into it, so they start off, they said, all right, so some homeowners are losing wealth as high mortgage rates weigh on home values, at least on paper, as the once red hot housing market cools quickly. Sales have been slowing down for several months, with mortgage rates now double what they were at the start of the year. Home prices likewise dropped 0.77% from June to July, according to a recent report from Black Knight, a software data analytics company. While that may not sound like a lot, it's the largest monthly decline since January 2011, and the first monthly drop of any size in 32 months. Now, when I put my house on the market, I put it back in May 2nd. 3 days later, we had like 2 offers. It didn't stay long. May 2nd, we put it on there. 3 days later, we had like multiple offers. So it didn't stay on the market that long. And we just closed in July. So, during that time, the market was hot. Like you put a market on there, it didn't last like a week, So, at the time it was ridiculous, right? So annual home price appreciation still came in at over 14%, but in a market characterized by as much volatility and rapid change as today's, such backward-looking metrics can be misleading as they can mask more current pressing realities. So roughly 85% of major markets have seen prices come off peaks through July, with 1/3 coming down from more than 1%, about 1 in 10 falling by 4% or more. As a result, after gaining trillions of dollars in home equity collectively during the first 2 years of the COVID pandemic, some homeowners are now losing equity. And that makes sense. Obviously, at the time, the housing market was hot. Obviously the supply was low, so everybody was in demand for a house. So obviously, when demand strengthens, then that means that's going to increase prices. So everybody that had a property that was trying to sell it, they were taking advantage of all the the low supply, being able to put their prices very high and able to make a good profit. Even if you were doing a cash out refinance, you had a lot of equity in your home. You could take a lot of money and use that cash for any other purpose. So obviously right now, right now where obviously the interest rates are increasing, inflation, now it's driving it down a little bit. So-called tappable equity, which Black Knight defines as the amount of homeowner can borrow against while keeping 20% equity stake in the property, hit its 10th consecutive quarterly record high in the second quarter of this year at 11.5 trillion. But data suggests it may have peaked in May. Declining home values in June and July brought the total amount of tappable equity down 5%, and given the weakening in housing market since then, the third quarter of this year will show a more sizable decline. Some of the nation's most equity-rich markets have seen significant pullbacks, most notably among Key West Coast metros, noted Grabowski. So it said from April through July, San Jose, California lost 20% of its tappable equity, followed by Seattle at 18%, San Diego at 14%, San Francisco at 14%, and Los Angeles at 10%. So obviously it hit the West Coast hard, right? And we know when you're talking about the West Coast, properties over there, and, depending on which, how many bedrooms you're gonna, is over in the millions, right? So obviously they're gonna obviously feel the effects. And of course, when it comes to this whole real estate thing, it depends on the market, right? Some markets are, not affected as much as, other markets, especially like since California. So homeowners are still far from flush than they were the last time the housing market went through a major correction. During the subprime mortgage crash, which began in 2007, and the subsequent Great Recession, home values plummeted by nearly half in some major markets. Millions of borrowers went underwater in their mortgages, owing more than their homes were worth. That is not the case today. Current homeowners, on average, owe just 42% of their home values on both first and second mortgages. It is the lowest leverage on record. Losing some value on paper shouldn't affect those homeowners at all. Especially, and what they're talking about is like, especially back in like 2007, where a lot of people were underwater, we saw a lot of foreclosures. A lot of people are expecting that same thing, today, but that's not the case because of, these past 2 years where the values have increased as much as they have. People had a lot of equity in their properties. So a lot of people expecting, to see an increase in foreclosures or seeing the same thing they saw back in like 2007, 2008 is probably not likely because so many people had so much equity. Even if they lose 20%, they'll probably still be where they're at. They'll still be above water, where they'll still be able to, sell their property for, a good profit, or more, at least more than a mortgage. So there are, however, about 275,000 borrowers who would fall underwater if their homes were to lose 5% of the current value. More than 80% of those borrowers purchased their homes in the first 6 months of this year, which was the top of the market. So if you bought your property in the beginning of this year and you lost 5% and you were to lose 5% of that current value, then you most likely would be underwater because property values were so high. So even with a universal 50% in decline prices, negative equity rates would still be nowhere near the levels seen during the financial crisis, according to the report. So obviously back in 2007, 2008, that was something ridiculous. So people are not expecting that same thing to happen now because so many people had so much equity. But obviously with interest rates increasing the way they are now, expect a lot of people to lose a little bit of value. But obviously this is only the case if you're trying to sell your property. If you're someone that's going to be staying in your property, then this is not going to impact you at all. It's just going to affect people that are trying to sell their property. Luckily for me, I sold it back in July, so I have no problems with that. And I remember when I was going through the process of selling it, I was like, yo, we got to get this thing sold because, interest rates are increasing. Prices, demand, inflation. So it was a lot of things that I was worried about, but we was able to get it sold and have no issues, right? So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. If you got any comments or questions, make sure to leave it down below. Hit the like button, share, and please do not forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, right? So you guys take care and have a good one. Later.